Johnny Carson sat across from Bob Costas, looked directly into the camera, and said 7 words that made 12 million viewers hold their breath. I failed the people I loved most. It was May 2nd, 1992, just weeks before his final Tonight Show episode. And for the first time in 30 years, America's most guarded entertainer was about to reveal the one regret that haunted him every single night. The interview wasn't supposed to happen. Johnny had turned down every major journalist, every network, every magazine begging for his farewell interview. He'd spent 3 decades hiding behind the curtain, behind the jokes, behind that famous smile. But something changed in the spring of 1992. Something broke inside the man who'd made 23,000 audiences laugh. Bob Costas had flown to Johnny's Malibu home for what was supposed to be a simple 20-minute chat about retirement, light stuff, golf plans, travel dreams, maybe a few classic Tonight Show memories. The cameras were rolling as a formality, nothing more, but when Costas asked that innocent question, Johnny, looking back, what would you change? Everything shifted. The silence that followed lasted 11 seconds. You could hear it on the tape. Bob Costas, one of the smoothest interviewers in television, had no idea what was about to happen. Johnny's face did something it rarely did on camera. It cracked. "Bob," Johnny said quietly, his voice completely different from the performer America knew, "I was a terrible father, I was a worse husband, and I destroyed 3 families because I chose this." He gestured vaguely toward the distance, toward Hollywood, toward the Tonight Show, over them. Costas froze. The camera crew froze. This wasn't retirement chat anymore. This was confession. Johnny Carson had built an empire on never getting too real, never showing the cracks, never letting anyone pass the performer. But on that May afternoon in Malibu, the 66-year-old legend who was about to walk away from the biggest show in television history finally told the truth he'd been hiding for decades. What he revealed in the next 40 minutes would never fully air. NBC was terrified. Johnny's lawyers were furious, but the portions that did make it to television, the raw, unfiltered admissions from a man who'd spent his entire career hiding, changed how America saw its late-night king forever. Because Johnny Carson wasn't talking about ratings or celebrities or show business, he was talking about his 3 ex-wives who'd loved a man that didn't exist, his 3 sons who'd grown up with a father they barely knew, and the decades of nights he'd made 20 million strangers laugh while his own family fell apart in the silence. This is what Johnny Carson said when he finally stopped performing, and what he revealed about the cost of fame left everyone who heard it absolutely silent. Bob Costas had interviewed hundreds of celebrities, but he'd never seen anything like this. Johnny Carson, the man who could handle drunk guests, technical disasters, and every conceivable crisis with perfect composure, was sitting in his living room crying. "My first wife, Jody," Johnny began, his hands trembling slightly. "We got married in 1949. I was nobody. Just a kid trying to make it in radio. She believed in me when I had nothing. Supported me through every failed audition, every rejection, every year of struggle." Johnny paused, staring at something beyond the camera, something only he could see. "And the minute I got successful, the minute the Tonight Show happened, I left her, just walked away from the woman who'd stood by me when I was nothing. Because suddenly I was Johnny Carson, and she was just Jody, the wife from Nebraska who didn't fit the Hollywood image." The bitterness in his voice was palpable, not toward Jody, toward himself. Costas, to his credit, didn't interrupt, didn't try to soften it, he just let Johnny talk. "My sons, Chris, Ricky, Corey, they were little when the show started. Chris was 7, Ricky was 5, Corey was just born. And I convinced myself that working until midnight every night, spending Sundays writing monologues, missing birthdays and school plays and little league games, I convinced myself that was me being a good father, providing for them, building a future." Johnny's voice cracked. "But what I was really doing was hiding from the hardest job in the world, which is being present for the people who need you most. It's easier to perform for strangers than it is to be real with your own kids. You know why? Because strangers don't know when you're faking it. Your kids do. Have you ever watched someone you admire completely fall apart? Not the pretty kind of falling apart you see in movies, but the real kind? That's what was happening in Johnny Carson's living room. Joanne, wife number 2, she tried. God, she tried. She'd beg me to come home earlier, to take vacations, to just be there for dinner once in a while. And I'd promise, I'd swear I'd change. Then I'd get to the studio and forget everything except the show. The show was safe. The show was controllable. Marriage, fatherhood, that was terrifying." Johnny looked directly at Costas, and through him, at the camera. "I married Joanna, wife number 3, thinking maybe this time would be different. Maybe this woman would be the one who could handle my schedule, my priorities, my emotional unavailability. And you know what? She tried too. For 13 years, she tried. But you can't love someone who isn't really there, even when they're sitting right next to you. The camera caught something then that viewers had never seen in 30 years of Tonight Show broadcasts. Johnny Carson wiping tears from his eyes with no joke to deflect, no commercial break to hide behind, no Ed McMahon to rescue him with a laugh. Just a 66-year-old man, finally admitting what success had cost him. The worst part, Johnny continued, his voice barely above a whisper, wasn't the divorces, wasn't the alimony or the lawyers or seeing my failures in the tabloids. The worst part was watching my sons grow up into strangers. Bob Costas leaned forward slightly. What do you mean? Johnny's face contorted with pain. Chris called me once. This was maybe 1985. He was in his 30s by then. Called to tell me he'd gotten a promotion at his job. He was so proud, wanted to share it with his dad. And you know what I said? That's great, son. Hey, I've got a taping in 10 minutes. Can I call you back? The silence stretched out. I never called back, got busy with the show, forgot all about it. 3 days later, my assistant reminded me. 3 days. My son wanted 5 minutes of my time, and I couldn't give him 3 days' worth of remembering to call him back. Johnny's hands were shaking now. Ricky, my middle son, he stopped trying to have a relationship with me when he was 16. Just stopped. Stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped pretending we were father and son. I told myself he was being dramatic, going through a phase. But the truth, he'd figured out what took me decades to admit. I wasn't his father, I was Johnny Carson who happened to share his DNA. What Johnny said next hit different, hit deeper. And Corey, my youngest, he tried the longest, kept showing up, kept calling, kept inviting me to things. His college graduation, I missed it, had a show to tape. His wedding, I came for 30 minutes, took some photos, then left early because I wasn't feeling well. The truth was I felt fine, I just felt more comfortable at the studio than at my own son's wedding. If you've ever pushed away the people who loved you most because you were chasing something that seemed more important, you know exactly what Johnny was feeling in that moment. Bob, Johnny said, looking directly at his interviewer with red, swollen eyes, I made 20 million people laugh every single night for 30 years, standing ovations, Emmy Awards, the respect of everyone in this industry, but I couldn't make my own sons feel loved, couldn't make my wives feel chosen, couldn't be present for the people who actually mattered. Costas asked the question everyone watching wanted to ask. Did you try to fix it, to make amends? Johnny's laugh was bitter, hollow. I tried. God, I tried. Called Chris about 5 years ago, said I wanted to start over, be a real father. You know what he said? He said, Dad, I'm 41 years old. I don't need a father anymore. I needed one when I was 7, when I was 14, when I was 25, and didn't know how to be a man because I'd never watched you be one for me. Johnny's voice broke completely. He wasn't mean about it. He wasn't angry. That's what killed me. He was just matter of fact, like he'd grieved losing me decades ago and moved on. And I realized I'd missed my chance. You don't get those years back. You don't get a do-over on raising your kids. Bob Costas sat silent for a long moment before asking the question that would define the entire interview. Johnny, why are you telling me this now? Why, after 30 years of privacy, are you revealing this? Johnny Carson looked out the window of his Malibu home, toward the ocean, toward something far beyond what the camera could capture. Because I'm retiring in 3 weeks, and I need people to understand something. Success without the people you love means absolutely nothing. And I figured if even one person watching this, one father, one husband, one person chasing their career like it's the only thing that matters, if one person hears this and goes home early to have dinner with their kids, then maybe all my failures meant something. His voice steadied, grew stronger. I'm not looking for sympathy. I made my choices, chose the show over everything, every single time. What I'm saying is, those choices have consequences you can't see until it's too late. You think you have time? You think you can make it up later? You can't. Johnny turned back to face Costas directly. 3 marriages destroyed. 3 sons who grew up essentially fatherless, even though their father was one of the most famous men in America. You want to know the real irony? I built my entire career on being likable, on making people feel comfortable, on being someone millions of Americans invited into their homes every night. But I couldn't do that for my own family. The camera caught Johnny wiping his eyes again. My biggest regret isn't a show I did wrong, or a joke that bombed, or a guest I mishandled. My biggest regret is that I sacrificed real love for applause. I traded 3 women who wanted to grow old with me for the adoration of strangers who'd forget me the minute someone funnier came along. And I missed watching my sons become men because I was too busy being Johnny Carson to be their dad. Bob Costas asked one final question. If you could go back knowing everything you know now, would you still have done The Tonight Show? Johnny's answer came without hesitation. Yes, and that's what haunts me most. because even knowing the cost, even seeing what I destroyed, part of me would still choose the show. That's addiction. That's what workaholism really is. It's not loving your work, it's using your work to avoid loving people, because people are messy and complicated and they need things you don't know how to give. He paused, his final words measured and deliberate. So this is my last show in a way, not the one I'm taping in 3 weeks with Bette Midler and the tears and the goodbyes. This is my last show, telling you the truth I should have admitted 30 years ago. I was a great entertainer and a terrible human being to the people who deserved better, and you can't applause your way out of that kind of failure. The interview ended there. Johnny stood up, shook Bob's hand, and walked away from the camera one last time. NBC aired portions of the interview 3 days before Johnny's final Tonight Show episode. The response was unlike anything the network had expected. The phone lines exploded, not with congratulations or nostalgia, but with people calling to say Johnny's confession had changed them. Fathers who'd been working late every night went home early. Husbands who'd been prioritizing careers over marriages had difficult conversations with their wives. And thousands of people who'd been chasing success at the cost of everything else finally stopped to ask themselves what they were really running from.